This is ContactTalkRadio.com, consciousness in action, and you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Good morning and welcome everybody to the Healthy Self Podcast. This is your host of the day, Regan Archibald. And I am really excited to be here with everyone this morning. It is a beautiful morning in St. George, Utah. And with me today as the norm, we got the founder of Go Wellness and East West Health, Bad A practitioner, an acupuncturist, functional medicine provider, and peptide expert, Regan Archibald. Reagan, how's it going?
Oh, great. Beautiful morning.
Beautiful morning in Midway, Utah. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Well, sweet. Well, we had a fantastic Health Accelerator challenge last night. And that was, so if you are not a part of that, make sure you dive into that. You go to AcuEastWest/hack. That's HAC, stands for Health Accelerator Community or Challenge or Course. Whatever direction we're going, that's what that C stands for. So we have a big challenge this week. Really exciting. So we just finished up our 6-week Brain Accelerator course. And so everyone is like genius. It's crazy how much smarter everyone is since that 6-week course. I don't know about you, Reagan, but I just feel way more intelligent after that last 6 weeks.
No question about it.
Probably accelerated like 200%. It wasn't very high to start with though. So, at one point it really, it goes, that percentage really can be manipulated. No, but it's been a great course. The challenge this week is to get some customized nootropics. So you can email Reagan at gowellness.com. You can also email me at Cade, C-A-D-E, at gowellness.com. And I'll get some of the specifics, but we can help you dial in the best possible nootropic for you to optimize your brain health. One place you can go, and this is my go-to every single time, every day I'm taking this one, is Intergenius. And our show today is brought to you by The Smart Medicine. So you can go to thesmartmedicine.com. I'll post that in the chat box as well. And you can look up Intergenius. That is a really good... oops, I just sent that to panelists. I need to resend that. That is a great nootropic. It's got a nice, even, equal blend. Really safe for really, anyone. I don't know of anyone that would not benefit or have any contraindications with that. Right, Reagan?
No. I think it's a really balanced formula.
Beautiful. Well, you guys take a look at that one. It's called Intergenius. And so that's another that's a nootropic that you can take a look at and grab right off the website. So let's dive into today's topic. We got a really cool topic today. Going to be diving into some peptides, talking about COVID long haulers and just like recovering from viruses and sicknesses. In general, there's some really helpful peptides, and so I think today's show really intriguing. I know this is a topic of conversation as well as interest across the board. So let's dive in, Reagan.
Yeah. So not recently, for the last year at least, I've been talking to patients who have had COVID symptoms that have been lingering. And so they've said, well, what can I do? And what does this look like? And so we've found some successful strategies. And so As we are in the month of September, I made the challenge, and what we're offering is a $100 discount off of your entire functional blood chemistry lab review. And so today I'm going to show you why it's so needed now more than ever, is to keep your immune system very intelligent. Whether you've been vaccinated or not, it's really critical to start looking at all the components of your body and not depend on a singular therapy to transform your health. And so I'll be covering several different topics today. It will get a little bit nerdy. If we have time, there's 3 brand new peptides that I'll be introducing. One that I haven't talked about much, but one is the ABP7. The other one's the thymulin and thymulin zinc. Zinc is what activates thymulin, so I'll be sharing some studies on that. And then if we have some time, we'll jump into the ARA290 and maybe even some tesamorelin. So we've got a lot to cover today. But before we jump in, how many of you have any of these symptoms? And I'll go through these. I can actually, I'll share some slides that I've been preparing. I woke up early. I usually wake up early on Wednesday morning. And whoops, that's not what I want to share. Wednesday mornings and Thursday mornings to make sure my content's all ready. So let's talk about some of these long haul symptoms. So fatigue. How many of you have fatigue, shortness of breath, joint pain, chest pain, cough, loss of smell, Sicca syndrome, runny nose, red eyes, loss of taste? I mean, these are all really critical things that can show up if you've had some type of viral infection, whether it's COVID or otherwise. Headaches is the big one that I see. And sputum production, so a lot of saliva, lack of appetite, sore throat, vertigo, muscle pain, diarrhea. These are some of the main symptoms that can show up with the long haul symptoms. Interestingly enough, these are also very similar if you have chronic Epstein-Barr virus, if you have cytomegalomy, if you have Lyme disease. So all these things are very important to start looking at. But yeah, so how many of you have some of these symptoms? Because this is going to be a really critical show for you today as we dive into this. Okay, loss of smell. Some days you probably want that a little more than others.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So
luckily, I'm out of the diaper changing phase. Olive's potty trained now.
Oh, she's 100%. That's right. She has her little toilet in your living room. It's awesome. She'll just drop her drawers, go right there, put them back on, start cruising around.
Yeah.
How would that be?
It's nice. She can still be playing with her toys and just get business done and get back to it.
Just go for it. Yeah, it's awesome. We had a podcast guest on Go Wellness Radio a while ago, and he said, if it takes you longer to poop than it does your dog, you got problems. So I was like, that's interesting. That's kind of like Olive. She's a fast pooper. No scrolling the internet for her. All right. So what is immunity? How do we get immune intelligence? Well, one of the things you got to look at is we have this thymus gland in our chest, and the thymus gland is what activates the nice lymphocytes. And lymphocytes are T cells that help regulate the immune response in our bodies, and they're actually really powerful for the success and health of your immune system. But when we're in the womb, that's when our thymus gland is the biggest. And as we're kids, we have a very enlarged thymus gland. So our immune system is just gaining lots of intelligence. And the healthier your immune system is, the longer you're going to live. So this is kind of an interesting thing, because the thymus gland, as we age, it starts to shrink and it involutes. And as it involutes, our bodies lose a lot of this intelligence, this immune intelligence. And that's one of the things that we see is we're living longer, as we're seeing more autoimmune disease, neurodegeneration, because of the loss of intelligence in our immune system. And frankly, some of the treatments that we're deploying especially the vaccine schedule for kids these days, my concern is that over time, we're going to completely create chaos in the immune system when, I think by the age of 18, if you're on the regular cycle that the pediatrician's recommending, your kids are going to, by the time they're adults, you're going to have about 72 different vaccines. And now with COVID, who knows how many boosters that will be recommended by Pfizer and Moderna. But I could see the writings on the wall that this might be a every 6-month process, or now they're saying 5 months, and before it was 8 months. So what this show's about today is to give you some data that might actually help create more intelligence in your immune system, because the chaos and some of the confusion in our immunity is what's leading to a lot of autoimmune conditions and these chronic diseases that are more prevalent now than I've seen in my 20 years of practicing. So we'll share with you some ways you can create immune intelligence. So that's the big thing. And for those of you who do any health coaching with Carly, she does this really cool tapping technique, and that's something all of us can do. Is you can tap right in the mid of your chest, you can tap up underneath your clavicle, you can tap underneath your eyes, and these are ways that you can stimulate some T cell production, some general ways. But today we'll talk also about some studies you can look at when it comes to peptides for stimulating the thymus gland. And I think you'll find it pretty interesting. So this is a very complex system. When you look at your immune system and the thymus hormones, some of the major thymus hormones are thymosin alpha 1. Cade, what do you know about thymosin alpha 1? Because you've used this and we've had it in our clinics for a long time.
So thymosin alpha 1, I've used that. Really started using it significantly like last March 2020, when the big scare of COVID was coming out. That was something I started using on a daily. I was injecting my kids, just really doing whatever I could to amplify the immune system. My understanding, and Reagan, you could probably communicate it better than I, but we have this little thymus gland, and it helps with T helper cells. And as we age, that thing almost becomes obsolete or just doesn't do a lot. And so if you're injecting or if you're getting your body some additional thymosin alpha, it can really help with enhancing your body's immune intelligence.
That's it.
Yep. What I do there.
That was awesome. I mean, I think you did a phenomenal job, and so I can go into some more detail on that. But yeah, as we age, there's other parts of your body where T cell production comes from, but a lot of it's governed by our hypothalamus, our pituitary glands. Even your cortisol levels are going to have some type of impact on your white blood cells. Your body's regulating that, and if you have like a chronic infection, cortisol levels come up it's an anti-inflammatory hormone. So you're going to see there's just a lot of influence. But thymosin alpha 1 was initially discovered out of the Albert Einstein School of Medicine. It was Dr. Goldstein in the 60s, and he realized that there's a gene that gets expressed, and the thymosin alpha 1 is that gene that helps with T cell proliferation and T cell function. So that overall T cell function can also come from another peptide made by the thymus gland. Thymosin alpha 1 is one of those peptides. Thymopoietin is the other one. And then thymulin is the third one. And then all of these three major peptides are responsible for turning on the gene for T cell function and proliferation, which leads to the integrity of the immune system and antibody production. So if you think about antibody production, one of the things that we're trying to do in our bodies so that we have more resiliency is create a little more awareness of these spike proteins and some of these viral infections that are coming in. And so just by the nature of having a lot of thymosin alpha 1 like kids do, what we're seeing is kids are, 99.99% immune to this thing. And, they may get infected, but the sickness is usually pretty mild unless they have some comorbidities. And yes, there's always variants, and you can find those on the media, on the news. But in large part, if you look at the studies, kids are actually pretty robust because of, I believe in large part because of their thymus gland being, a little more active and more intelligent for the most part. And so this is a really critical thing. If we look at these hormones, these thymus hormones, not only do they help you with creating better cytokine function and cytokine stability, they can help balance the IL-1, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, which can be the result of a cytokine storm. When those cytokines get out of control, then your body goes into this kind of fit, and it's like, where is the viral infection? Where is the pathogen? And then that's when we go into this respiratory failure. So just by having thymosin alpha-1 and thymulin and thymopoietin active in your body, one of the cool things that happens is you have this intelligent feature where it's almost like your immune system is operating on a whole nother level, and your body's able to recognize threats, create antibodies before you have the cytokine storm. So in a lot of cases, you can be asymptomatic, which we've heard about a lot, especially with COVID, is asymptomatic individuals are spreading this disease. Well, it's very difficult for your body to, if you've already got the antibodies built up and you're asymptomatic, it's going to be pretty darn hard. You're just going to have a small window of time where you can actually spread the disease. And I think it's been overhyped in the media, and they're kind of departing from biology in general. But yes, you have a couple hours of window, but it's really the symptomatic people who will spread any type of disease. So this is probably one of the best things that's happened with COVID, is we've been able to have a good excuse. If you're sick, stay home. And it doesn't matter if you have COVID or something else. Maybe you should let your body rest and get some better intelligence in your thymus gland. So that's kind of some science there. So here's the major thymic hormones and peptides. This is all of them combined. And it's pretty interesting because primarily we've used thymosin alpha-1 and we use thymosin beta-4. Thymosin beta-4 is the thymus peptide that's right there activated when your body gets injured. So it's a regenerative peptide that actually can help the body start signaling the production of stem cells. So thymosin beta-4 triggers pericytes, which are these little cells that are attached to your blood vessels. Pericytes peel off and become mesenchymal stem cells and go right to the area to heal. So very important for healing connective tissue, especially we've had patients who've had heart attacks and strokes, and we've seen thymosin beta-4 just regain a lot of their cardiovascular function and brain function. So you've got thymosin beta-4, thymosin alpha-1, APB7, which is what we're going to be talking about today, which is a really exciting new peptide that they've now been able to sequence. You've got the thymic humoral factor Y2, thymostimulin, which we talked about, thymopoietin and thymopentin, and then thymulin. So these are some of your major thymic hormones and peptides. So Cade, is everyone asleep now because of all these nerdy terms? Or
You
pause for a minute.
started to put me to sleep, but you woke me back up now. No, I think we're this is fascinating because I think it's really important for everybody to understand how their immune system functions. What are some things that we can do to really enhance that? And I think these are all really good tools. So if you're falling asleep, wake up, because this could save your life.
And this will be, somewhat controversial, but if you look at the antibody tests for, there's certain countries who are now saying, well, if you show us proof of, that you've got elevated antibodies, then we're going to say, okay, maybe you've got some immunity. And there's just some weird things that we're doing when it comes to, testing the immune system these days that doesn't make a lot of sense, because what a lot of the mainstream studies show is that you have antibodies that are elevated for about 6 months, and then they assume because the antibodies drop that now you can get COVID again and you're really at risk for it. Well, here's a couple of problems with that assumption. The first problem with that assumption is assuming that elevated antibodies are the only way you can have this immune reaction. But if you had elevated antibodies for every single thing you've been exposed to, I mean, you're exposed to over 1,000 different influenza viruses every day. And if you had elevated antibodies for that, and then you have elevated antibodies for COVID and elevated antibodies for pollens and grasses or foods, I mean, our bodies would just be in this cytokine storm all the time. And so what happens is our bodies have an elevated attack. It's no different than what happened, 9/11, right? Our military went into high alert. We were on orange for a long time. And then once we're able to get things secure, then we kind of calm back down. And that's what our immune system does. So just because you take an antibody test and that antibody test shows that you don't have any antibodies present, it does not mean that you have not had the infection and that you're not immune to it. So does that make sense, Kate? Did I explain it well enough? So I think that's a big thing that's going on right now. That's number one problem.
Absolutely.
Number two problem that we've done is we have vaccinated so many people, and we're using a gene therapy. And this month, in September of 2021, the CDC did change their overall definition, so that gene therapy is part of that vaccine definition. So it is technically a vaccine now, according to the new definition. But before, we're calling it gene therapy because it's primarily what it is. And I think it could be a breakthrough treatment. But the problem is most viruses, when they mutate and they become less pathogenic. So the COVID virus is very infectious, meaning it's easy to catch, it can spread quickly, but it's not as pathogenic to the majority of people are fairly healthy. Obviously, we have our high risk category, and those are the people we did our best to protect, in 2020, now 2021, and that's really important. But what we've got to realize too is just because something's super infectious does not mean it's going to be pathogenic. And do you get the difference, Kay, between infectious and pathogenic? One is, you can get an infection of something and not even know it, right? Like you can test positive for COVID and be like, what? And then you get tested again. And that's a false positive. Nope. False positive. Nope. And you have 3 tests that all show positive, but no symptoms, right?
Yeah. So that's infection. And then pathogenic is when it's actually showing up in like your
like a disease. Pathogenic. Yeah. So pathology is when your body goes into the disease state, and now you've got symptoms that show up.
That makes sense.
So those 2 distinct differences. So influenza, very infectious, not always pathogenic, right? COVID, same way. And what usually happens is you have a big influx of a viral infection. And then, you have a certain amount of the population that are going to become pathogenic, right? But when you vaccinate everybody and then you quarantine, we all spread apart. One of the problems with, this idea of herd immunity and natural immunity, which people forgot about for a minute there, is that when you put force and pressure on a bacteria or a virus, think about the antibiotic resistant bacteria that happen in hospitals, right? This is a big problem, is because we overuse the antibiotics, and now we have all these very dangerous strains of bacteria that are creeping up, and it's no different with viral infections. So we've now created this immunity for people. We've triggered the spike protein from an unnatural source, And now what we're seeing is the virus just mutated, but it mutated instead of in a weaker way. The concern is it's mutating in variants that might be more pathogenic. So once again, it's one of my big issues that I've always had with our Western medicine mentality is like seek and destroy, where we use basically militaristic thought processes to treat disease. Sometimes the side effect of the treatment can be worse than the disease itself, and that's my concern of what's going on right now. And only time will tell. This is a hypothesis, but those are the two big things you want to be aware of when it comes to these diseases, because it's not going away anytime soon. And the best thing you can do, I believe, is what we're talking about today. Yes, we have our lifestyle decisions, and we have our health accelerator challenges every week. So make sure you're doing those. But today we're going to dive into some of the science and therapies that I think can make your immune system. Actually, I don't think I've got research that I'm going to prove to you that man, if you can increase the intelligence of your thymus gland, you've got a great chance of getting through this and keeping yourself and your family healthy.
Yeah. When we had a comment come in from someone saying, "I wish I had known this before I was vaccinated," and I think this is really, I guess it's frustrating to watch the media just shove one singular option down everyone's throat, and then the government to come in and try to mandate something that I think it's completely unconstitutional. It's frustrating because there's other options out there that can keep you safe and keep others safe, as well as it's really just getting educated is a big thing around this that I think the mainstream media is not allowing to happen very freely.
Yeah. And even the studies out of Israel, it's the second most heavily vaccinated country. And what we're seeing is we advised every citizen, whether you've had COVID or not, to get vaccinated. Even patients who had COVID within 2 weeks were getting vaccinated, which I was like, this is ridiculous. And what they found is that the unvaccinated population who have had COVID are 13 times more resistant to the Delta variant. Like you have 13 times greater, like I don't know what the math is. That's like what, 13,000% more immunity to the variant.
1,300, yeah.
1,300 than somebody who doesn't have it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so, but the thing about it is we're all trying to be really good humans, and we want to do what's right. We want to protect others. And so I'm just here, sharing you some information. I study this every single day. And so I think it's really important that we start making a little more rational decisions, but doing nothing is the worst thing you can do right now. Because this is it's a new virus. Now we got variants coming out. And so that's why I wanted to talk about some brand new peptides that have recently come available right now. So we'll be talking about those today. So if this can stay on YouTube for very long, for those of you who are watching on YouTube,
it doesn't get shut down very quick. Hopefully it'll stay out there. Yeah, and I think that's really critical. And I love how we've talked about this before, but how you can actually the interesting thing about any virus, anything that comes along, is it's almost like the virus can be a genetic upgrade to your immune system as you get exposed to some of these things. Like it's not necessarily this horrible thing that we're making it out to be. Now, yes, there's lives that have been lost, and there's some serious things that happen, but it is the way that our immune systems and our bodies evolve over time. Is all these different things come out, and it's just how we can get our body in the best possible shape to be able to handle whatever life or the environment throws at it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, Kate, is that, our whole genetic structure, we have a virome just like we have a biome, right? And so our bodies, our DNA, at least 50% of our DNA was engineered by viruses. And so that's what Kate means by an upgrade, is a virus can come in and just help our cells function just a little bit better. And so, yeah, the planet's changing, the seasons change. We are, biology is always evolving, and viruses are just one of those little features that can be here to help us. So, yeah. So Kate's like, oh, well, let's just make friends with the scary little creatures, the invisible things.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, should we talk about thymulin a little bit and dive into some of these peptides?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So thymulin, what it does is it repairs the ratios of T and B lymphocytes and their subpopulations. So these are really important parts of your white blood cells and your immune response. This is like upgrading your T cells and B cells, stimulates cellular immunity reactions. It enhances phagocytosis. So phagocytosis is essentially when you gobble up the pathogen. And your body's like, nope, you're gone, and it renders it useless. So then you're shedding the virus and getting rid of it out of your body where it's inert. It stimulates regeneration and the blood formation in the event of their oppression. It improves cellular metabolism. So thymulin's, pretty darn effective. So here's where you can see that there's a study. This was published in 2020. In the International Journal of Molecular Sciences. And the title of the study is The Thymus Pineal Gland Axis, Revisiting Its Role in Human Life and Aging. And it's a very interesting study because your thymus gland, your pituitary, your adrenals, your thyroid, all of these endocrine functions all connect to the thymus gland. I'll show you kind of what they pulled out. What they found is that thymulin, that singular peptide, it connects to your luteinizing hormone, your sex hormones. It connects to your thyroid hormone. So keeping your thyroid really healthy is one of the great ways you can increase and improve your metabolism and also your immunity. It helps with prolactin. It can downregulate it in certain cases because prolactin can be a bit aggravating, but IGF-1 and growth hormone. Thymulin is absolutely necessary for IGF-1 and growth hormone. That's where they looked at its role in aging, because the older we get, the less growth hormone we have. It helps with the ACTH and adrenal hormones. So that's really important. These are steroidal hormones or corticosteroid hormones made by the adrenal glands, and that's primarily your cortisol, but it can also be the epinephrine and norepinephrine. So thymulin is connected to all these different structures in the body. And if you look at it, one of the things that thymulin can do is it can be anti-inflammatory, which can calm down the immune system. And so realize that when there are symptoms from COVID-19, it's not fun. I mean, you can feel like you got a semi that parked on your chest. You can feel like your head's going to explode. I've had patients with massive gastrointestinal issues. I mean, painful gas and very, explosive diarrhea. And so one of the things with thymulin is you get balancing of the interferons. Interferons are those peptides that are diving in. They're kind of scoping out the scene. They're kind of like snipers, but they get into the joint space and into the hidden areas of the body, and that's why you get achy. When you get the sniffles, Kate, and you get kind of achy and fluey. Yeah, that's interferons.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah, and so you can get the other thing that thymulin does. It helps with endorphins to help combat the pain. Thymosin alpha or tumor necrosis factor alpha, somatostatin. Somatostatin, once again, it can inhibit somatostatin, so you can get better growth hormone secretion. So I know we're getting a little too technical here, but I'll just summarize it. It helps with the nervous system, including your brain. It helps with the hormonal system and the immune system. Thymulin binds those three major structures in your body together.
Very cool. And so if I'm on those interferons, if I'm just like achy, sweaty fever, that's also your body's way of like shedding, like trying to get rid of whatever's attacking you. Am I right?
Yeah, so there's the 5 Ps, and this is how you can get rid of pathogens. So you can puke it out, and all of us who have had food poisoning, holy smokes, I still can't eat at a Whole Food salad bar. I got food poisoning once from it, so every time I go by, I'm like, or portobello mushrooms is the same. Anyway, yes, so you can puke it out, you can pee it out. You can perspire it out. You said sweating, so you can perspire it out. You can, we got puke, pee, perspire. You can poop it out. And then maybe there's 4. Anyway, I feel like there's one more, but those are the main ways that you can get rid of it. And then as we get fevers, it's actually really good because the fevers, what they're intended to do is they're pulling calcium off your bones, because phagocytosis is really important, but the pathogen has to be surrounded by ionized calcium. And so it's interesting because fevers are essentially like saying, hey, sorry, bones, we need some calcium. So we're releasing calcium from our bone. The calcium are like the military that goes surround the robber, and then the big FBI or whatever comes in and eats it up. That's like the judge, eats it up.
Yeah.
That's phagocytosis. So it's an interesting process, right? When you kind of look at it, our bodies are very intelligent, and they know, if we give it more intelligence versus dumbing it down and forcing it down a certain pathway, which is what we do with a lot of our antibiotics. It's like warfare on the body, or chemotherapy is like chemical warfare. Vaccines in a large part are forcing our immune system down a certain pathway. And then we end up having these chronic diseases and nobody knows why. It's like, it's like William Osler. He's the medical director at Yale University, their medical program. He says, in medicine, you have to recover twice, once from the disease and once from the cure. Chinese medicine, natural medicine, we don't want you to recover twice, just once from the disease. That's it. So here's some interesting things. Zinc and vitamin D have made a lot of headway in the news, as is ivermectin right now. A lot of people are coming in, hey, I want to have ivermectin on hand. So this is kind of an interesting thing. But one of the things we found with zinc is, yes, when your zinc levels are low, you're going to have a loss of taste. And we used to do a zinc taste test in the office. I'd have this little bottle of liquid zinc, and patients would come in, and I'd look at your fingernails. Do they have white spots? And you guys have all done this, or are they brittle? And then you can do a zinc test. And if you didn't taste anything, we knew you were depleted in zinc. And so taste and smell typically go together. But in this study, they found that the serum thymulin in human zinc deficiency, they found that the activity of thymulin, which we've been talking about, is dependent on the presence of zinc in the molecule. So you need zinc there. And so they realized that zinc is critical for these T cell functions. Zinc is also critical for thyroid function, for avoiding leaky gut, which is interesting because lipopolysaccharides will increase as your zinc levels are lower. That's one of the reasons you get fungal infection and white spots on your fingernails. So there's all these cool connections, but you want to make sure your zinc levels are good. So look at your labs, and your alkaline phosphatase is the number one marker you want to look at for zinc levels. All right, so here's some things with COVID long haul. One of the things they found is that lipopolysaccharides, or these gram-negative bacteria from leaky gut, is part of the big problem. So healing leaky gut, it goes back to the digestive system, where the majority of our immunity comes from, is your digestive tract. So when you're doing pizza and beer and Netflix, when you're quarantined, you're just creating this massive problem in your digestive tract and leaky gut. And that's where a lot of people, when they actually came out of their house, they got so sick. So So we have all these pro-inflammatory cytokines that are present or that are elevated in the presence of lipopolysaccharides. And so that's IL-1 beta, IL-2, IL-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and interferon Y, and IL-10. And so when you have the presence of thymulin, then thymulin can actually start to calm down those markers, which you'll see in a minute. So in some of the studies, they found that the patients who have COVID-19 long haul symptoms, they have these elevated numbers, and I'll show you a slide here. So this is from Radiance Diagnostics, and they have this cytokine 14 panel, and they look at all the major cytokines that can go along with COVID-19, and you can actually find that those are elevated. So there are ways of testing if you have, true long haul issues. So one of the very first places we want to start before we dive into complete treatment is looking at your lab markers. And Cade, we've been talking about this quite a bit this month, is telling all of you, like, hey, we've got, not only is it a difficult transition, one of the most challenging times of the year from an immune perspective, when we go from summer to fall and then fall into winter. That's when our immune systems, whether it's, during a pandemic or not, it's really important to get your health dialed in. And now is the time to do it, because, we've got the fall equinox in just a couple of weeks, and then we're heading, pretty quick into winter. Fall goes by fast here in Utah. So get these labs ran. But this gives you an example of just one of our overall panels where you can see from a functional perspective how well your body's doing.
Yeah, no, and I think this is where, if you're, I'm sure there's people out there on our group that maybe haven't got the vaccine yet. They're trying to figure out if that's going to be a good option for them. And I know I like working with Dan Kellums. I watched one of his TikToks, but he's one of our colleagues, and he works really closely with us. And his kind of stance is, it's completely your choice, but you should always know what's going on with your health before you make a decision. And so if you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way that I can combat my this virus, or just enhance your health, really digging deep and getting some lab work is the best way to get started, because that can give you directionally the best possible direction, because there could be some things that would cause you to have more of a reaction to the virus or the vaccine. And so these are ways that you can really help mitigate that, is figuring out what's happening internally right now, and what things do I need to look out for and do to really enhance my immune system and enhance my overall health.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So real critical thing. Here's what we're going to look at when it comes to your immune health. So we look at your neutrophils, your eosinophils, your lymphocytes, your basophils, your monocytes. These are all critical markers to see how healthy this is basically a snapshot of how your thymus gland is functioning. So really, really, really critical things. So let's talk about, peptide number one is thymulin zinc. And once again, remember, zinc is what activates the thymulin. So it's really important. You have all these minerals and nutrients in your body. A lot of us forget how our body is so connected. And so, once again, we know this is very useful. So it helps. One of the things that you can do is with thymulin zinc this is one we use for the hair. It can be topically applied. You can do it injection. And that's very similar with the outcomes of thymosin alpha-1. And then the other one that's really exciting, this new peptide that I wanted to introduce today, is ABP7. So that's the actin binding peptide 7. And this is one of those thymus gland peptides. And so what it helps with is exocytosis induction. It helps with dermal wound healing, hair growth angiogenesis, tissue regeneration, re-epithelialization. So the epithelial cells are what's getting really damaged by this virus. It replicates in those epithelial cells, And that's where those spike proteins can become very toxic. Even from the vaccine, they can be toxic. And that's where, we're seeing strokes and some neurodegenerative issues. There's, to date, there's been over 14,000 deaths. And so, and over 500,000 reported adverse reactions. And a lot of those are from the epithelial cells. So it's anti-inflammatory. ABP7, it downregulates cytokine release. It inhibits premature apoptosis in the heart and inhibits premature apoptosis in the hippocampus of the brain. So it helps correct heart damage and helps with the brain. So heart and brain, really important things. So APB7, these are the two areas where people are getting hit the hardest with this virus. And so this is one of the reasons I'm so excited about this peptide. The other thing that it does is the APP7, it works on the thymosin beta 4 sites. And so this is interesting because remember the thymosin beta 4, we talked about that earlier, but thymosin beta 4 is actually responsible for activating these pericytes, not parasite, but sites, these structures that are attached to your blood vessels, and they turn into medicinal signaling cells or mesenchymal stem cells. And so, so this APB7 is one of the most novel peptide structures that you can use. We've got zinc, thymulin zinc, and then you've got APB7. And so the way that you kind of differentiate the two, you'd say, well, if you really are looking for protection against the long haul COVID, zinc thymulin would be a great one to take. If you've got, maybe you want to just stay ahead of the curve, maybe you've got some cosmetic stuff you want to work on at the same time. But really, I think APB7 is a little more superior because of its ability to address both the pathways of thymosin beta 4 and thymosin alpha 1. But it does it in a way that's works right on these endothelial cells, which are the area where we get the most damage from the disease, or even, unfortunately, when some people have reactions against the treatment. So very interesting things that you guys may want to consider. So, Cade, what are your thoughts on that?
I just think there's great. I don't have any specific thoughts other than just reiterating my first initial point is, look, I think best place to start, look at your blood work and what's happening internally with your own body. The nice thing with thymosin alpha and some of these peptides is you really, is there any contraindications? Is there any reasons why someone wouldn't want to take these?
Yeah, and that's where it's really important that someone would want to, meet with one of our doctors and sit down and find out, because, in certain cases, if someone's got active cancer, these may not be the best because they are angiogenic. So it might not be the best course of action. There may be other things you can do in place of it. So that would be one of the areas of contraindication. But otherwise, the beautiful thing about peptides, and once again, we're not making any medical claims here or giving any medical advice, but peptides are just, they're a bypass for us to get right into that cellular expression that allows your body to start regaining intelligence. So, I mean, that's the overall thing about it. Chinese medicine's no different, using these herbal substances and plant substances and active ingredients in nature to turn on different healing properties. It's no different. Peptides are just more selective, and we know the pathways they can turn on and turn off, which makes it a little more strategic, and it's a little better of an outcome. So these peptides can be very key. The other one I wanted to cover is KPV, and so KPV is another one that's over the counter, very well tolerated. It has potent anti-inflammatory impacts. It's been shown in animal studies to be safe and effective when administered orally. because the APB 7 is an injection. The zinc thymulin can be oral. It can also be an injection. But KPV is just oral, and we've got it in our clinics. So this would be a great way that you can use it. Here's the study where you find that KPV actually helps with the inflammation in the gut. And so for colitis, for example, it's been studied very heavily, but they found in this particular study with inflammatory bowel disease that the mice who had inflammatory bowel disease and colitis, who were drinking, they had KPV in the drinking water, actually had pro-inflammatory cytokines that were stimulated. The pro-inflammatory cytokines became absent in the presence of KPV. So it had a very dramatic anti-inflammatory effect, and particularly working on the NF-kappa beta pathway. So pretty interesting. Just put it, if your mouse has colitis, Cade, you can, your pet mouse, you can now put KPV in its drinking water and you'll heal its colitis. So yeah, KPV, the studies also show it helps with cystic acne, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel, eczema, psoriasis, mold, Lyme, and even has some potential with MS or inflammatory skin and eye conditions, allergic asthma, arthritis. But the core of where it's working on is it's another one of these peptides that works on the endothelial cells, and it helps create more immune intelligence, particularly on the melanocorticoid sites. And so it's KPV is very similar to melanotan 2, except you don't get the tanning from this particular peptide, but you get the immune enhancing properties. And so this is another study where they look. This was published in 2008, and they found that it, once again, it reduces intestinal inflammation. So there's been multiple studies that show KPV, which is a naturally occurring tripeptide, with oral administration. It helps, here's another one in 2016. It helps effectively alleviate ulcerative colitis. And so the reason why I bring this one up and I circle back around is, if you remember the COVID long haul symptoms, the researchers were able to identify that elevated levels of LPS, or lipopolysaccharides, which is what's present with leaky gut. That's the way you can test leaky gut, that and zonulin. With leaky gut being prevalent, you're going to have more long haul symptoms. And so by using this oral version of KPV, they found that you're able to decrease the damage from the mucosa damage in the intestines and downregulate tumor necrosis factor alpha. And so you can see the overall diagram here that the researchers created, where you can see that intestinal barrier being pulled apart in these colonic epithelial cells. And then you can see the KPV activates the wound healing and anti-inflammatory process in the lumen of the colon. And anyway, there's some interesting things that each one of us can do to get our body's health back on track and to start healing again. We have a whole series we call it Never Stop Healing, because if you keep looking and opening up your body's pathways, the body can heal itself. And no matter how scary things look out there, it's really important that we take a step back and we say, well, what can I do internally? How can I turn on the most pathways, no matter what age I'm at? How can I get my body to respond favorably to the world we live in? Because you're going to live in this world a long time. And I think there's two choices that we have. One is we can turn it over to something else and have an external force that just manipulates our immune system to behave in a certain way. The second way we can do it is we can actually start increasing our body's own intelligence so that our body can recognize exactly what it needs to do. And hopefully that will help us all. And once again, there's a choice that needs to be made right now. And hopefully we gave you some good information about some interesting therapies that are out there that are well studied and very safe, and I find them to work really well for me.
Love it. That was incredible. I don't know about you guys. That gives me way more clarity and comfort around, just this whole process is just knowing we can take control of our own health. We don't need any external force or any government agency to tell us what to do. Is you can take control of your own health and work with a provider that you trust really, and does some research and dives into this. And so I know we had a couple of questions on the KPV product. Give us a call if you want to get more information on that. I think that could be helpful. We can ship that out to you, as well as you can just come to the office. It's 801-872-8699 for those of you on the radio. Reagan, amazing content today as usual. Thank you so much for putting it together and putting it together for everyone else. And love you guys. We'll be back same time, same place next week. And make sure visit thesmartmedicine.com. Check out Intergenius for nootropics. This is the week's challenge is brain health. So get that again. Christy, our phone number is 801-872-8699. 801. I'm going to type that into the chat box just so you can have it easily available to you. And really appreciate everybody. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Tell all your friends, family about the podcast and the show. Share the links. We want to get this message out to everybody we possibly can. If you ever want to check out recordings, we house those on yourhealthyself.com. You can get all the recordings of the shows, and then we're also published on, I believe, iTunes, your traditional podcast places. So love you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.